And welcome into our Forged Alliance review. So, this is a really interesting game. I've talked about it a few times on the show. The thing about Forged Alliance, well, Supreme Commander, Forged Alliance being the primary standalone expansion pack, so subconfo, as we call it in the community, is that, it's a game about scale, right? So, what's really occurring here is a lot of games have like a fixed camera, or they just have like a mini map and a maxi map. This game has a continual sliding scale of maps. It's all one map. The map is the territory, it's 1-to-1. There we go, all the way in, all the way out, down to the subatomic, up to the supra terrestrial. Now, for the purposes of this episode, we're just going to play one quick battle. We're playing as the spiders. This is a civilization of spiders, spider people, from outer space who build spider robots to carry out their dastardly deeds. Looking in the top right, you can actually see I'm fighting the mirror match. Ery versus Rodan AI Yassi, which I guess is his spider name. I don't speak spider. I don't have the mandibles, but you could probably pronounce those extra characters, within the mandibles. But even when you're fighting the mirror match against a spider, the rules are pretty much the same. It's your objective. Your objective is to get the spider into the enemy bedroom. And I'm making a pulling motion with my hand here, but they pull the plug, and that's when you win. And obviously, you need to keep their spider from getting into your bedroom. Now, how do you get the spider? Well, you can see I'm building some units here. These aren't spiders, these are minions. These are other enslaved beings, or automata produced by the spiders. Some of them are spider-shaped, but they're not true spiders. When we make them, we'll zoom in on them. Now, the game has a very complicated set of tier systems. It's very similar to Total Annihilation. So, for instance, you use a level 1 factory to build a level 1 engineer, and you can build a level 2 factory, and then a level 2 engineer, and 3, and that's true for land and sea and air, and they're useful for strategies. Now the spider... There are 3 spiders, 3 named spiders. They're called Yorgos, Michaela, and Carl. And I'm going to produce all 3 spiders. I'm going to summon them down, but I'm only going to... probably the game will be over with the first spider. My opponent, he's probably going for a pretty standard build order. Engineers, scouts, planes, bombers, some defensive turrets. It's a naval map. Oh, there's the first plane. There we go. See? What did I tell you? Immediately in with the planes. I haven't got any air units, and I've only got anti-air units. I haven't actually built any anti-ground units because I was just explaining, this is a naval map. There's just not going to be any ground combat, so just beginning with the anti-air units, we're countering that expected meta, and he's walked right into my plan. Fucking idiot. Now, like I said, the won't stop with the planes, so he's going to keep sending those. We're going to keep building things. You're supposed, usually, the kind of game plan my opponent is probably engaged in is one where you go through the construction tree in order, right? You build each of your 3 axes of force, and you level them up one at a time, and you construct a solid economy for the basis of that. We're actually going for just a spider rush. We're going for all spider all the time. Spider rushes to the bedroom. It's called Daddy Longlegs, just because the strategy has legs. Which means that we're not actually going to build any other factories. We built the first factory, the land factory, just to get some of those, minor servitors to spread around the island, to build a little nest. But the Supreme Commander this fell in the middle, Ery, he's, one of the humans who welcomed the Spider Overlords, so he's given a position of power in the New Order. He's able to make decisions, he's able to construct buildings, and he's actually going to be able to construct every building. And we're not going to get him to control every building, but he could. And so critically, he's going to level up. We're going to level him up. Oh, now this is an interesting play here. So my opponent is attempting to capture. So I've placed an unguarded forward resource extractor. And you might think that an unguarded forward resource extractor is a bad idea, right? Because your opponent will destroy it, and you'll lose the resources. But my opponent, thinking himself very smart, has attempted to capture it with an engineer, which I have baited with my own engineer, and now I'm one engineer up, and I've still got my resource extractor, so I'm actually winning. And if he was playing a different faction, I would of course have access to that faction tech tree as well. That wouldn't really help with the spider run. There's no other spider based strategies. I could pivot, right? So for instance, the other two sides in the game are the orbs who want to ponder, so they build this device, ponderous device, and if it's damaged, it explodes and kills their whole team. But if it isn't damaged, it just it ponders maximally, and as your meter fills up. I mean, there's like a mechanism to it, but from the perspective of the casual player, you could just really say that you win. And then there's the human resistance who have sort of tanks, bullets, ships. Their win con is usually building the Atlantis ship, which then produces like an air force. It's kind of like a floating fortress sort of thing. So they don't have a special win con. They have to destroy the enemy base through their military actions, which it's the human side, right? They're basic. Humans never have an interesting property. Very few games are willing to take that step, right, of making humans an endurance predator, as they are in the real world. Very few games willing to let you chase your opponent down over a period of days, sink your teeth, into their neck. Most humans have quite underdeveloped teeth. These days, I see a lot of Americans with flat teeth. I don't think they'll survive when the spiders come, but that's really a subject for another video. Now, we've leveled up our commander to 2, so he's just building a tier 2 power generator. We'll need a tier 2 power generator to power our tier 3 power generator, and we'll of course need a tier 3 power generator to summon the spider. Now there's going to be a lot of construction. We're going to maybe skip through this construction while this construction's ongoing. So, I've kind of given you the basics of the game, the basics of the lore, the basics of the plan. So it's time for our guest segment as always, so that'll be the Arkantos Minute. Now Arkantos, what do you think of Supreme Commander 1, Forged Alliance?
Yes? I'm going to get that very excellent head of Gargarensis.
Yeah, I can't say I recommend that, mate, but I keep telling you, man, he's not worth it. You need to find someone who actually respects you for you. And, you gotta stop playing real-time strategy games with your heart. So they've started sending a slightly different variant, so, they're still trying with the air attacks, but you can see there were no, this kind of single large gun platform is really no match for the spider, even though they aren't true spiders, the spider minions do have a bonus against air units. This goes back to Magic the Gathering, right? Green, reach, spiders. It's all classic. Really, culture is just kind of it's very one-sided in its depiction of spiders. They predate on the air unit and they wait. Well, we're gonna get some spiders soon that don't do either of those things. Well, no, that's not true. They predate on units of any media. Upgrading our forward bases, we set them out as bait. We've baited, I think, all the engineers we can. We've accumulated those bonus engineers, those bone ears. as we call them. And so we'll upgrade those. For the resources, which, here we go. So these are our spiders. These are our 3 spiders. Yorgos, Michaela, and Carl. Yorgos first, always. Michaela and Carl you don't actually have to do in that order, but it makes sense. You might notice there's a 4th button there. That's not actually a spider, that's a sort of web, but we're not going to do that because our spiders, like I said, we're going for the spider in room, fast spider strategy. So we're just going to go straight in with Yorgos. You can see him summoning now. He takes quite a while to summon, a lot of energy. So we've got our tier 3 generator, we've got all our tier 3 mass extractors. We've also been, the engineers have been harvesting all the trees on the island. Spiders make webs in trees to capture them. Most spiders on our planet at the moment are too small to capture a tree, but it's a kind of biologically hardwired instinct into them. So they do it, and it's productive for them anyway because they get little bits of tree, they get leaves, they get acorns from the tree. But because this is, a representation of our future, as experienced through the prophetic visions of the team over at Square Enix, who of course have never been wrong about the future, this game is able to accurately represent that we're feeding the trees to our spiders. I'm going to fast forward a little to the summoning of Yorgos. I think we can just kind of get on with that, and yep, here he is. So he's kind of manifested. You might notice he's sort of been filled in. Basically, he's travelled through the dimensions, and now he's awake. Now he's standing up. Now all of his legs are operable, and he'll be using those to deliver himself to the enemy bedroom. And when he's in that bedroom, the enemy commander will scream, and that's the signal for the match to be over. You can see he shot a few webs out just now. He's shooting his beam. No, sorry, those aren't beams. Those are pulses. Please, I would never call a pulse a beam. Do not tell the spiders that I did that. I understand the difference between many forms of biological weapon. I've been thinking of getting beams installed, actually. The kind of big question is what the fuel source would be. I can't really digest a tree, personally, which is why I've been thinking so much about teeth. I think I could... I think I could bite through the neck of a deer, but, science has yet to determine if that's enough to fuel a beam. Now, this is the beam, this is Yorgos' beam. Yorgos has a very powerful beam, very, limitless, it's effusive, really. The pulses are also, the pulses are directional, so he's facing the water. He emerged, and he's kind of turned back to look at the distance. Well, his body has turned, but the neck device that orients the beam is spinning in many directions to, announce his presence. I think they're, these kind of lesser spiderlings produced by the enemy are kind of all, they're showing up to get annihilated. Their death drive can't really be suppressed. So we're using, the beam doesn't really turn off. He kind of has to use the beam, but we're going for a leg-based strategy here. Spiders, obviously, their legs are their most powerful assets. You can kind of see their legs just trampling all over the enemy room. I think technically this is... I'm surprised the referees haven't called it. I'm just checking that the menu is... Oh, there we go. That's the alarm. There we go. That's when the spider is, agreed to be within the room. You pull the plug, and the entire island is annihilated. Which is the only defense against a spider in the real world. That's why they put it in the game. Although, of course, as you can see, Yorgos still has about half his health. remaining, and that's why our subservience is mandatory.